Welcome to Iron Sights. This podcast candidly seeks to create opportunities and deliver impact by sharing the experiences and wisdom of successful entrepreneurs and thought leaders who unapologetically aim to win in health, fitness, business, and life. I'm your host, Scott Howell. Welcome to Old School Meets New School. Tradition meets innovation, and imperfection meets excellence. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. So I want to welcome a new friend of mine. This is somebody that I just got in contact with not too long ago, and he's quickly become one of my favorite guys. His name's Dean Romero. He is the Chief Operating Officer and Vice President for Self-Made Training Facilities. He's also a longtime coach and husband to Charlene, father, and for me, so far, this guy's basically a ninja in the world of personal training business development. So, hey, Dean, thanks for joining me today, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. And, like I said, I've listened to some of the others, and I'm just honored to actually have the opportunity to even, be a guest here. So.
Well, hey, man, I've been aware of you for quite a while, but finally connected recently. I mean, we finally got connected by some other pros in the business through a thought leadership group, which really gave me some insight to really who you are and what you're doing with Self-Made. I think the thing I've been struck by your humbleness and your seemingly quiet nature, especially in light of the enormous success you've had as a human and certainly in the world of health and fitness. And a couple of things that came up along the way in some of our conversations in the group before just really stuck out to me. And I'm like, this guy has got way more knowledge than I think he lets on. And I think most people probably should be, if you're a coach, especially if you're an independent contractor, you need to be hearing what guys like you are doing, but particularly on how you've been able to do it. Self-made is a thing. I mean, how many facilities are you running right now?
We have about 40 total between the ones that are built out and the ones that are awaiting locations in about 11 different states right now.
Yeah, and so I mean, this is a massive thing, and I don't think it's a lot of people, particularly in mainstream fitness, really know about Self-Made. If you're an independent contractor and you haven't heard about Self-Made, then you're just not paying attention. But one of the things that popped out on a call was how many coaches like you're sort of mentoring at any given time. It's 60 plus coaches, sort of in like a facility.
Yeah, so in our headquarters location, which I oversee with the rest of our team, we have about 60 coaches, sometimes up to 70, just depending on flow and what's going on. A lot of our coaches have other aspirations, so they get into other areas of fitness and other things as they kind of use Self-Made as a platform for that. But at any given time, it's about 60 to 70 in our actual location. Throughout the company, obviously. Each location holds anywhere between 35 on our smaller locations, but up to 60 on some of our larger. So, that can get pretty exponential pretty quickly.
Yeah. Can you talk about that model a little bit, just kind of how it works? So you have a franchise owner, and then it's primarily just independent contractors. When I say just independent contractors, that's kind of that statement's not really in line with what's really going on. I mean, I know what it's like to manage 60 or so employees. I cannot imagine what it would be like to manage 60 plus people that are running their own business. I mean, that's 60 different personalities already, but now you include 60 different businesses inside the one business. Mm-hmm. Can you talk just a little bit about the Self-Made model and kind of give people a good perspective of what it is and how you guys do it?
Yeah, here's the interesting thing is when I first started with Self-Made, I myself I was a trainer in one of our locations. It was our second location that Miguel Aguilar is the CEO, and he's the CEO, president, owner, founder, all that good stuff. And he created Self-Made training facility. The original one was like a 3,000 square foot facility in Murrieta, California. And I had heard about it actually through the grapevine, and I had seen some stuff on social media with it. And I was looking to do my own place, and I was just kind of waiting out my time. And my business partner at the time moved, and she relocated. And so I was sitting in a place with my wife where we were kind of thinking, what are we going to do? What's the move we're going to make? And then I had looked at Self-Made, and it was interesting because, and this is why this is even important, is because at the time I've been a coach and a trainer in the industry. Lots of big box gyms. At the time, I had already been independent for a little bit and bounced to a couple of those places. And I was really stuck because I missed being a part of something, being a part of a culture, being in an environment where you get to learn from a lot of other really talented coaches and whatnot in like the bigger box gyms. That just did a really great job of providing tools and resources and all those types of things. But at the same time, I love my freedom. I'm just one of those people. I'll choose freedom over anything all day long. I don't like to be confined to a small box and being told what to do. And so I was stuck because some of these other places, they just didn't have the resources and some of the other stuff. So one of the things, my wife, her degree is in business and marketing. And so she really helped me to put together a lot of things for my own personal training business at the time. And then systems and whatnot. And when we found Self-Made, I thought, this might be the thing that's going to be it. But, funnily enough, I called up Miguel and I said, hey, I'm interested in coming on board with you, but here's my conundrum, so to speak, is I love what you're doing, but I've worked really hard to develop my own image, my own brand. And it's not a big thing, but it's mine and it's personal to me, and I don't want to let that go. And the first thing he told me is, hey, you don't have to. I want you to keep it. I want you to use what you've been doing and, just be a part of what we're doing. You don't have to let it go to be a part of it. And I was like, that's interesting. Normally, you have to buy all into something and
Right.
just kind of let go of anything of your own.
Right.
And so I decided to meet with him. And at the time, the Corona location was very small. It was about 5,000 square feet. And it was actually at the time not built yet. He had just got the keys that day. It was an abandoned tire shop or Jiffy Lube or something like that, and shit everywhere. And so we're there, and he was explaining the whole vision and concept. I said, look, man, I'm already kind of sold on everything. As long as you weren't, full of it, I'm ready to go. And so I signed my contract that day, and I was one of the first people to sign a contract in that location. But again, here's why that's even important, is because what that was for me is it bridged those two worlds. And that's what I started to figure out is it was all of the collaboration, all of the growth that I had wanted as a trainer and as a coach. I got to work with some of the best coaches in the industry. I got to learn about powerlifting and bodybuilding, performance training from people that were doing it, not from the way that a corporation wanted me to do it, which, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. And I
Right.
told you before, I have nothing but love for every fitness organization. There's room in the business for everybody. But I just felt like I was able to grow so much in that time that I was coaching there. And then at the same time, there was this great culture. There was a lot of family. And it was like the bridge between the world of corporate and, some of the mom and pop private places, which, again, nothing wrong with that either. But it was, for me, I wouldn't even say a hybrid, but the optimal way to go about practicing my fitness business and the way that I wanted to live my life. And I think it was such a great thing. And so Self-Made has prided itself on that. Somewhere in there, Miguel had offered me the opportunity to come and work for him. He just said he liked the way my business ran. And for me, I was at this place where I either had to figure out how to elevate my platform and my fitness business into this different level, because it had grown in a way where I couldn't keep growing. I couldn't just keep putting more hours in. So I had to diversify it, or I could go work for him.
Right.
And sitting back and forth, going back and forth, having conversations with my wife, we like her thought process is one of those things that really balances me out, because my brain just goes and goes. And I said, here's what it comes down to. I can continue to grow my business, and I can influence my small sphere of people.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the time, I think I had like almost 50 clients on my roster. We call them athletes at Self-Made because we believe anybody that trains is an athlete. I had about 50 on my roster that were really consistent, and, that's my circle of influence. Or I could be a part of this larger thing. And what it boiled down to for me was this. Before I started with Self-Made, many years in the coaching industry, I had very much struggled financially. And I was in a place where I loved what I did. I was super passionate about the fitness culture itself, but it was very hard for personal trainers to earn a very solid income without just working around the clock. And the year that I was in Self-Made, I finally broke a 6-figure income. And to me, I was able to take my family on vacation. I was able to pay bills without stressing. I was able to do a lot of things. I was able to get a house. I was able to do things that at one point I just thought, if I'm going to be in fitness, I'm just going to have to be that, guy that's okay getting by, or I have to go work for a corporation and be a management guy. But self-made was the first place where I didn't have to do that if I didn't want to. And so all these amazing things happened to me financially, but I didn't have to sacrifice who I was to do it.
Mm.
And so I thought to myself, every trainer in the world deserves at least to have this opportunity. And if I can be a part of the vehicle that provides that opportunity, then that allows me to influence not just my people and their circle and so on. It allows me to influence hundreds, if not thousands, of trainers and their opportunities, and to contribute to that. And so that's what self-made is about to me, and even the rest of our team. We have a growing team within our corporate facility. It's about providing that opportunity to people out there to pursue their passions and pursue their dreams, but still have some structure, to not just run ragged and be lost. A lot of small places, they don't have those resources and ability to mentor trainers or to provide resources and tools, or they force it on them. And I think that I'm a big person on, if you give people the tools and you guide them, that's going to be the best way without
Right.
forcing things on them. So self-made is that. Self-made is, how can we give as many tools, resources, and ability to these guys? And now these independent contractors, they come into our facility, and this is the part that really gets it, is I pay my lease space to the facility as an independent contractor. If I make $200,000, which we have trainers in our company grossing really high incomes like that are just, they're trainers.
That's outstanding.
They're not being charged more than the guy that is,
Just
coming in and getting
starting
started.
out. Mm-hmm.
And what it is that guy coming in getting started, that's very affordable. We make sure we kind of balance out, what's affordable, given the demographic in the area, based on how many clients the average trainer tends to hold, that type of thing. But once you start there, you never go up. You don't continuously get, more and more money taken out. So whether you make six figures or whether you don't, as long as you can do what it is that you're passionate about and have that type of freedom, that's what we're there for. We don't tax them any more than that.
So I think that is a unique, you touched on so many things right there, but the uniqueness of it is you're providing, I think where a lot of people or a lot of coaches come out of the maybe bigger box or independent situation is they need several things. And one of those places, or one of those things they need, is a place. Like, they need a place to do it in. And there's a lot of places that are offering, like, oh, you can use my space, but it comes with all these conditions, right? And you have to have some type of framework. You have to have some type of model. Otherwise it's chaos and it doesn't work well. I've seen any different type of model. I've even operated a couple of those different models, and they all have their goods and their bads. The thing that I think that you hit on that really intrigues me is that you're able to do this and create and maintain a culture that continues to last and continues to thrive, which I think is the hardest part whenever you're running any type of a personal training or coaching program, where you've got so many individuals, so many personalities, there's different methodologies, there could be different philosophies, there generally are, and the facility, when you walk into a self-made facility, it is a different feel. There is you can feel it's that culture is palpable, right? And the facility brings a different kind of tone to it. And that is, let's be honest, it's a little bit more intense. There's a little bit, you could almost call it aggressive. Is that fair?
Yep, absolutely. 100%.
And people are looking for that. So and certainly coaches are looking for that. So maybe here's kind of a direct question. What's the average age of a coach at Self-Made?
I'll tell you the funniest thing, bro. It's interesting because of the aggressiveness and because of just the kind of in your face. It's kind of like for those of you that haven't been to one, anybody listening, it's like a cross between a garage type gym and a higher end facility. We have great equipment. We have, great structure, but at the same time, there's graffiti on our walls. Everything's black, music's blasting. So it's something, like you said, completely unique, completely different, very, very strong. It's a very strong culture. But we have trainers like in our headquarters facility. I got a guy, his name's Danny Torgel. He's been in the industry longer than I've been coaching, and he's in his 60s, and he's one of our more popular
Still
trainers. You know what
doing
I
it.
mean? And so we got dudes in ladies in their 30s and their 40s, 50s that are coaches. And so yeah, we do have a lot of younger demographic too, because they're attracted to the freedom. But what I love the most is the people that have been around in the industry, that can teach me a thing or two about a thing or two. Those guys love our facility because they're able to run their business
Yeah.
from their experience the way that they understand.
Yeah, I think the other thing I got from it, or I get from it, is it may be what for a lot of people, or where a lot of potential customers, and I don't mean coaches, I mean actual clients, might fear walking into a facility like, God, I don't want to be in a facility where everybody looks way better than me, where there's tank tops and, and
Yeah,
all this
yeah.
stuff. That's not where I want to be. It's not where I want to be. And they have this vision in their head, or this picture in their head, maybe because they had a bad experience
Oh,
or
100%.
whatever. And a lot of it is kind of how fitness has been portrayed. Like, it is very much physique oriented. But at the end of the day, everybody can relate to that at some level. But my point is, I think why this part is important is, still, when you walk in there, everybody's family when you walk in the door. I mean, the coaches are a family, and there's a diversity in the clientele that I don't think you see in any facility. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to find it in any facility, whether it be big box, maybe higher end, maybe, sort of the more affluent type of place, or communities and places that you might see, even right on down to, your typical Golds or Worlds or whatever else. It really is a special kind of feel. And I ask that question because while you have diversity in your coaches, you also find that on the floor with your clients. So not everybody's going in there to be a physique competitor. However, that's a large
Nope.
part of the culture, correct?
It depends on the facility. Each one carries within it its own unique culture, but at the same time, if you really pay attention to our facilities and the way that they're laid out, this is something that, early on Miguel was really good about. There's enough to attract the power lifters. There's enough to attract the bodybuilders. There's enough to attract the performance coaches. There's enough to attract, back when I was training, it was kind of like the everyday type athlete that, wanted to get, healthier and get better, and had some definite goals and wanted to train like an athlete. But, there weren't somebody at this, crazy elite level yet. And so what I love about you bringing that up is I've experienced it on both sides. I've experienced it as a coach myself, just coming in day one, not knowing anything. And I've experienced it on the corporate side of things. We preach culture over anything. And I'm a big believer in, as is the rest of our staff and the rest of our team, that if we don't have culture, we don't have anything. You can have the best facilities in the world. You can have the best coaches in the world, but without a culture, you will die in this industry. And our culture is meant to be a little bit louder, a little bit more aggressive, in the sense that it gets your attention. But here's the absolutely beautiful thing about our culture. Once it gets your attention, it also welcomes everybody in the same with open arms. And so, like when I was a coach, and I'll give you an example, when I was a coach and I had signed my contract, I was super excited. And then you can ask even if you ever meet my wife, you can ask her about this. I remember one day seeing the rest of the coaches that were getting posted on social media that were going to be coming with me. And I looked at her, I said, I don't know if I belong there. Like, those guys are on a
Yeah.
whole different level.
Yeah.
And she was just like, you'll be fine. You've been doing this forever. This is your thing. She always kind of is that voice in my ear. And I went to an event before we actually opened, and I met everybody in person for the first time. And I fell in love with so many of the people and their personalities. And it was like they were just regular people like me. And so that want to make a difference in people's lives. And so when I started at the facility, in the beginning, I'm like you said, I actually am very quiet for the most part. I'm a little more reserved. I'm very stoic in nature from what people tell me externally.
I'd have to
And
agree.
so, yeah, I was very to myself. And it's hard to get me out of my shell sometimes when I feel like that. But the culture pulled me in. Within a few weeks, I was powerlifting with the powerlifting team. I did that for a couple of years. Then all of a sudden, the bodybuilding guys pulled me over, and I got to train like that for a while. And then, right now, I actually do a lot more performance stuff, and we got some great performance people. And so it really changed me as a person. And this is one of the things I absolutely love is I'll see a coach come in, and they'll tell me, I don't know if I belong here. And I just tell them, take a deep breath, understand you're welcome, and just see what happens. And you'll see within that year that person transform as a coach, as a trainer, as a person, in their own physique, in what they love and what they're passionate about, in a way that you don't see in some of these other places. And that's what happened with my clients simultaneously. You know, my clients, my athletes, I had trained a variety of ages, right? So my oldest athlete at the time, I think she was in her 70s, late 70s. And then my youngest was 13. And every single one of them, they said, "Where are we going?" And I told them, showed them, they're like,
I don't know if
I don't
that's
know
for
if I
me.
can do it.
Yeah.
And I said, I felt the same way. I've been around some of these people, though. I think that if you just take a deep breath and give it a chance and just rock with me on this, trust me like you always do. I mean, a lot of these people I've been training for 5, 6, 7. My longest line was like 9 or 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Just trust me like you always do. And if we go and you don't love it, we'll find another way. And so they came and they fell in love with the culture, and they were just as much into it as I was. And some of my older clients actually kind of like dug the idea. Like they would show their friends, "Hey, look at where I train." And they're like, "No way, you don't train there." And they're like, "Yeah, I'm in there, lifting
It's
with
cool.
everybody else," and that kind of stuff. And so that's the thing that we to go back to the culture piece. One of the things that we do with our trainers and our coaches as they're coming in is we onboard them. And in that onboarding, the first thing you're getting talked to about is the history of the company and the culture of the company, because those are the two most important things. Because if you don't know that about a company, then it's just another gym.
Yep.
And it's not worth going to if you're just shopping price, right? Because we're not the most expensive, we're not the cheapest. But at the same time, when you consider the culture and the vibe and what we're trying to bring to the table and what we're trying to do in the industry, that's where it becomes worth it. And so these guys, when they come in, I tell everybody in that onboarding the same exact thing. To get somebody to come into a gym in general, to leave their car, to walk into the gym is the scariest moment of their life, because it has been for me. Even if we go into a little bit more of my personal background, the gym saved my life, right? But it terrified me. Being judged by others terrified me. And so if you get somebody to step through those doors, there's a way to do it where they're going to feel welcome instantly. So that way you're trying to buy them, for their own sake, a week or two where they're going to give you and trust you no matter how uncomfortable they feel. And then when they feel it, when they accept it, when they're accepted and they're treated as an equal, then it's going to do more for them than anything else. And I have so many trainers come and tell me, "Dude, it's so cool. Like, I had this lady, she was just very reserved. She wanted to be kind of in the corner. And now she's out there, lifting with everybody. We have conversations with the other athletes as they're training, and she's part of the family."
Right.
Doris is part of the family.
Right.
And that to me is the most amazing thing. So,
yeah, I think every coach, wherever you've started along your journey, you made the mistake somewhere where you were trying to sell them too hard, or you're trying to tell them too much information or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it took you some time. If you're in this business long enough, you learn that what you just said is literally the most important thing you could probably ever learn. And that is getting somebody to trust you. And that is taking care of their personal needs right when they walk through the door. And you don't do that by taking them out there on the floor and giving them a beat down, or, concentrating on, the process, which is giving them the tour, giving them the workout, giving them the presentation, whatever. But it's the things that you do within the process that really make it an art form. So it's kind of half business, half art, half science, or, that's a lot of halves, but there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. And you just alluded to a couple of things. Like, this wasn't always your thing. Like, fitness is something that you kind of found your way into, but it wasn't easy for you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've sort of always been an athlete, always been involved in sports, which is not an uncommon tale for most coaches. And at some point, sports either becomes the catalyst or it gets taken away and creates something. It gets taken away in some kind of way, whether by choice or not by choice or whatever. And it creates this vacuum in life. And at some point, and wellness and fitness and in mental or psychological or in emotional health, but somehow we sort of find our way back in one way or another in many different forms, whether that's through sport or like bodybuilding or jiu-jitsu or tennis or dancing or yoga or whatever it is. We find our way back in. You've got a story about how you kind of got to here, and I would love to hear it in detail because I've never heard the whole thing. Maybe you can elaborate.
Right, It's like you said, I actually, I played sports from the time that I was, 4 or 5. I grew up in a Hispanic household. My parents knew that they wanted me to be healthy, but back then we didn't know much about fitness in general, and then especially in our area, it wasn't something that was super common. There was not as much knowledge and education and training available as there is now, and so my parents just put me in sports. I played soccer, I played baseball, I played football, I played all kinds. I tried everything. And I found in our family, we're a football family, right? So all my cousins played football. Everybody had an extra set of pads. So by the time I was 5, 6 years old, my cousins would use me for tackling dummies and all that good stuff. And truth be told, I hated football from the time I was 8 to the time I was getting ready to go to high school. But it's because I was always that kid that, like, I didn't work out, I didn't know anything about fitness. So if I wasn't playing a sport, I wasn't doing anything. So every year, like, Hell Week would start and it would be miserable.
Getting your ass kicked.
I would hate it.
Yeah.
And I tell my son these stories because he plays football. And I'm like, dude, by the time I was your age, it was a little bit different. But before that, I was that kid that was crying, doing bear crawls, and like, oh my God, this is terrible. But then I got into high school and I found a genuine love for it and what it did for me and what it made me. And it taught me to be a leader. It taught me how to work with people of different ethnic backgrounds. It taught me how to work with people of different viewpoints and beliefs. Like, I didn't always agree with my teammates or my coaches, but how do you work with people in those scenarios? And it taught me so much about life. And at the time, I had this amazing relationship with my parents. My mom was my best friend. My dad was like larger than life. You couldn't tell me anything negative about my dad. But one thing I had always struggled with was emotion, right? I didn't understand how to express emotion. I was very articulate, so I could speak well, and people always assumed on the outside that I was very well mannered and soft spoken, but I had these like really bad anger issues and an abundance of anxiety and borderline depression, but I didn't know how to express those things, and they weren't really taught at that time. Nobody really. It was just, hey, be tough. It was what it was, and nothing wrong with that. Nobody knew. You don't know what you don't know, so I don't hold it against anybody. But around the time that I was getting ready to go into my junior year of high school, I started dating somebody. It was like we were both young. It got to be a really toxic relationship. It caused a lot of stress. My family and I had a big falling out going into my senior year. And if you had asked me in my freshman year what I wanted to play football at Stanford. Football was my life, and I wanted to, get a law degree and eventually play in the NFL, retire and be a lawyer, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then, so by the time I got to my junior year, I was not big enough. I was not fast enough, and I was not strong enough by my own thought process. Right. I was at the time about maybe 5'6", 5'7", all of 150 pounds, middle linebacker. And the only thing I knew how to do was hit. So that's what I relied on. I was just very aggressive and used all of my anger and every bit of emotion that I had, I put into every hit. And why that's even important is because that's how I dealt with it. Right. Like I had all these issues that I didn't know how to deal with. So I dealt with them and used them there. And then towards the end of high school, it became apparent I wasn't getting invited anywhere. I wasn't going to go to, play anywhere. And I started to get really depressed about it, but I didn't know how to express it or how to talk about it. So it was really hard for me. I didn't know I was first guy in the weight room, last one out. Didn't know what I was doing. And, during the time, my high school, which is actually a really great high school now, we didn't have like a set strength program. We were going through a lot of different changes over those years, different coaches. Some of the coaches I had, they are my biggest influences in life even now. And I still do my best to keep in touch with them because they're great men. But to get like proper strength and conditioning, I just didn't understand. I tried everything that I could think of. Food, I just didn't understand none of it. I didn't understand any of it. I did everything wrong that a young athlete tries to do to get better. And none of it worked for me. So fast forward to my senior year, getting ready to graduate, or I do graduate. And my dad, who was he was a construction worker by trade. He was an iron worker. And I love the name of your podcast, Iron Sights, because that word to me, iron always reminds me of my father. He was one of the hardest, toughest, just fucking badass dudes you'll ever meet in your life. And I looked up to him so much, but he had his demons that he was fighting. And because of it, I won't go into detail, but him and I had a big falling out. And I was just too young, too arrogant, too prideful, and too too, I would say, in a place where I was too idealistic. I thought everything was supposed to be a certain way, and if it wasn't in my mold, then you know what? I just didn't understand that. But again, I didn't know how to talk about it. Didn't know how to talk, to have that. And that falling out with him sent me down this interesting spiral where my mom, she was trying to reach me, she really couldn't, and I just was lost, man. I was really lost, and I went into college as this kid who his hopes and ambitions, and I went to a college that didn't even have a football team, and I stayed local, and I was thinking about going to the military. I didn't end up doing it, and really what started to happen was the craziest thing. Without football, without the weight room, without athletics, without a way to express and to work through that anger and the frustration, the heartache, I just spiraled really bad. And
It's
I
like
became really,
identity crisis of sorts.
yeah, I guess you could say that, because I was no longer an athlete. And the thing that separated me from other people and made me, I mean, I was team captain my sophomore or my junior and my senior year. I started varsity on my sophomore to my senior year. So for me, it was like, I wasn't the best player in the world. I wasn't, the person that was going to be going to the NFL, but somehow I worked hard enough where I still was able to be a leader and have that. And so now I'm in this world where I'm just one tiny fish in a huge pond,
Yeah,
and nobody knows or cares.
there's no acknowledgement or reward system or way to measure um,
Mm-hmm.
success or failure. It all seems like failure if you can't stack any wins, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And by then, my parents had their own falling out. I'm sure that there was just a lot of things there that, again, at the time I didn't understand. And so what started to happen, my dad had kind of separated himself a little bit, and I was working graveyard at the time in a warehouse over like a year and a half. And I would try to go to school afterwards. I'd be falling asleep in class. So I started doing bad in school. And I was always a pretty decent student, but now here I am. I'm not an athlete. I'm not a student anymore. Falling asleep in even the classes I did enjoy, my history class, my philosophy class, all those types of things. My professors would try to reach out to me, and I just wasn't having it. I just was not all there. So I started, just trying. I wanted something better for myself, but I didn't know what it was. And I was working in a warehouse at the time, and um, I had a friend that referred me to like a mortgage dude, and so I was like going and taking these mortgage classes, thinking maybe I'll be in that industry, and I know that there's money in that and that type of thing. Meanwhile, my relationship, the little relationship I had with my mom, was now gone. I hadn't seen my dad for the better part of a couple of years at that point, and I was just off in my own little world, just trying to figure things out, and none of it was working. And it got to a point where I had actually tried to commit suicide. Now, thankfully,
Hmm.
I didn't understand exactly how to do it or what I was doing. So
Wow.
I tried to just take a bunch of stuff that I thought was going to do the job. And my roommate at the time found me, called the paramedics, and it was very embarrassing. But again, what I realized is, in my culture and in my family, people didn't understand it. So they didn't know what to make of it. And because I've always done such a good job at outwardly portraying the thing that people wanted me to be, it took everybody back. And so people were like, "You're the strong person. You're all these things. So how did this happen to you? I don't get it." And I didn't get it. And so one thing,
Did that further separate you and your relationships and people walking on eggshells now and not really
yeah, because
want to
people
leave
didn't
you
know how
alone?
to take me. People
Right.
didn't know how to take me. They didn't know how to be there for me. They didn't know what to do with me. And so I just continued to spiral. But again, one thing I always relied on is the ability to um, understand what people like to hear. Right. And so I would convince people that I was okay. And people, just because they want to believe that about you, because they want to believe you're okay, they're like, "Okay, he's doing better." Meanwhile,
That's
internally, I was just dying inside. And I'm very open with my own son about it, because I want him to understand how to communicate as a young man. And so I was speaking to him about it, and I was telling him, for me, what it was is I didn't understand what I was going through, and I didn't know how to express it. So I just didn't want to feel anything anymore. And so it wasn't even wanting to die, any of those things. I just didn't want to feel anymore. And so the reason even that's important is because I just didn't know how to let myself out. and how to express myself. And so I started to look for things that would help me, but I still couldn't find it. And, at that time, being in college still, I was just in this weird place. And I decided I was going to move and just start over. And I decided to reach out to my mom, try to kind of bridge that gap again, and have like a little bit of this coming together. And at the time, she see, like, my mom was always the hustler in the family. She was always trying to find ways to grind and make an extra buck. Or my dad was just a worker. He was a workhorse, and that's where I get my work ethic from. And for my mom, that's where I get my vision from. And so she had started as a cook in a restaurant, and then over time worked her way up to where she could buy the restaurant. And so I went to her restaurant one day, kind of hat in hand, and I apologized for a lot of the things I put her through. And we were talking. She said, "I think you just need a clean break. You need to get away from all this stuff. You need to start fresh." And that was the best thing she could think of. So
Wise words, right? Yeah, wise
I decided
words.
I was going to move to Texas. We had some family out there, and I went and stayed on this ranch out there, and it was this beautiful place. And I was just in this whole other world for a little bit. And then somewhere in there, my grandmother had passed, my dad's mom, and I came back for the funeral. And when I got back, I realized my mom was having some trouble financially with the restaurant, because she was a hustler, but she didn't know how to manage the business side of it. And so we got to talking, and she asked me if I could stay and help her. And so I told her I'd stay and kind of take that on with her while I was going to school and stuff. And I started helping her, and it was maybe, I want to say, about 4 or 5 months in, I got a call one day that she was in the hospital, and I was at lunch with somebody I was talking to at the time. And I left, I dropped everything, and I got to the first hospital, and they said, "Hey, your mom, she had a brain aneurysm. She has a bleed in her brain, and we got to get her to a different hospital. We don't have the ability here to operate on her, but we can't allow the blood to get to her brainstem, otherwise she'll die." And I was like, okay. So from the transit from one hospital to the next, I got there, and they were like, I was like, "Hey, so we're going to operate. What's going to happen? What are we doing?" And they said, "No, like, there's no operation. I don't know what you were told, but your mom, she has a massive bleed in her brain, and it's there's no way, she's brain dead at this point." And so when you start talking about next steps, and I didn't quite
Wow.
understand what that meant. And so it was this really crazy thing. It was like all of a sudden I'm spinning in this world where my best friend that I could talk to about anything, but I haven't really taken advantage of being able to talk to for years, is now gone. And I had to make that decision to take her off life support. And it was, for years, I labored under the delusion that I killed my mom, and that was a really hard thing for me. But somewhere in there, as I was going through that, I continued to, just, as you would imagine, just slide deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. Again, still, I was trying to have a relationship with my dad, but him and I would butt heads on a lot of things, and he was doing the best he can, but I was just unreachable at that point, and so during that time, and this is where it starts to get interesting, and this is where we start to take a little bit back towards kind of that fitness, is I had a cousin that my dad, like I said, he was a construction worker. And I met one of my second cousins for the first time on a job site, because during the summers I would go work construction with him.
Hmm.
I looked up to him so much that I just wanted to be like him. And so I would go, and I wanted to have that same experience that he had. And I would see how hard he worked. He'd be up at 2, 3 a.m., drive 2 hours to a job site, work out on a bridge deck, building bridges. And so I don't know if you're familiar with rebar, but
Oh
rebar
yeah,
is
I am.
the reinforcement
I used to
for,
work construction when I was
yeah,
about 15, 16. Yep.
yeah. So most of my days during those times were spent carrying hot steel on my shoulder. You could hear it burning and singeing your shoulder. Those are some men. If you ever want to work, you go work
Yeah.
with some of those guys. Those are some men right there. A lot of my family, that's what they do. But anyway, I met my cousin on a job site. He was my second cousin. Never met him before. We talked a little bit, and we kind of, developed a little bit of a relationship. And then we didn't see each other for many years. I don't even remember, to be honest, how I came in contact with him. I think, funnily enough, he was a friend of the girl that I had just stopped dating, and um, I reached out to him about something. We started talking, and he said, "Hey, man, why don't you come out to my gym?" He was at 24 Hour Fitness at the time in West Covina, And I was like, all right, I was just at that point, just sitting around doing absolutely nothing some days, and just living in my own depression. And so I was like, whatever, I'll go see him. By this point, I'm nowhere near an athlete. I'm chubby. I'm about as soft as I've ever been in my life, and just miserable. And I show up at his work, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you gonna do today?" I was like, "I have no plans, bro." And he was like, "Well, I'm off in a couple of hours. If you just want to kind of chill here and hang out while I train some people, and then we can go do something." And I said, "Okay." And so I would just sit and watch him train people for literally like a couple of hours at a time, and I would just watch the interaction between him and his athletes at the time, and like the way that they engaged with him, the way that he would speak to them. And it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. And then at the same time, I just watched and observed as he would walk around and talk to different people and just walk around the gym. And I seen that level of self-love and confidence. And I was just like, I want that. I have no idea how to get that, but I want that. Um, and I was so fortunate because he was like, "Hey man, why don't you just come work out with me a few days a week? Like
Hmm.
it is, something to do for you." So I was like, okay. So we started to do this thing where, I'd go to school or whatever I was doing. I would drive out to meet him. I'd hang out with him and talk to his friends and stuff while he was training. He would be done. We'd work out and then we'd go eat together. And that, I will tell you, he wasn't the most vocal person in the world, but we came very similar upbringing. And we got to talk a little bit more about just our experiences in life and dealing with depression and anger and stuff like that. And just helped. I realized how much it helped to talk to somebody, and then how much it helped me to start actually working out and taking care of my body. And it just lit something up in me that I'd never felt before. um, so during that time, after my mom had passed, I took over her restaurant because I thought to myself, I'm going to fulfill her dream. Like I have to at least get this thing into a place where that was her dream her entire life. She's always talked about, I want to finish it. But I hated the restaurant industry. It just wasn't for me. Um, so long story short, I found a way to try to get it out of the debt that it was in, build the business up. The previous owners had come back because it was kind of like a little local institution type place where there was this crazy, like awesome culture. And they helped me to get it back to a good place. We sold it. I got out with enough money to get my life started. Um, and then my cousin was like, "Hey man, I need a roommate. Would you want to move in with me?" So I moved in with my cousin, and he was like, "What are you going to do for work?" I said, "I don't know. I don't really have anything lined up." By then, I had dropped out of school to run my mom's restaurant. Um, I didn't know if I wanted to go back to school at the time, and he was like, "Well, I can get you a job at the gym I'm at." And he was at a different gym by this point. So I went and I got a gym as a training assistant manager, which for the gym that he was at, basically I wasn't going to get to train anybody, but my job was to sell personal training.
Right.
And it just so happened that when he got me the job, they were really just short staffed on trainers. And I ended up having to train a lot of the people that I
So
was
by
selling these
happenstance,
packages
yeah,
to.
because now you're selling the shit out of training, and there's nobody to train them. Somebody's got to train
Yeah,
these people because you're getting paid on commissions and whether or not these people stick around or not, and everything else. So,
100%.
bottom line is, well, somebody has to train them, so I guess I will.
Somebody has to train them. And so I just fell in love with that part of it. You know what I mean? Just working with people. But so it's funny because early on, I made, you talked about it earlier, I made every mistake a young trainer could. I mean, I just tried to kill people. I tried to be a great salesman. I tried all these things. But deep down, even though I wasn't executing on the level of getting that buy-in and a lot of the stuff I teach now, I still loved it. It was just still this really cool thing. I fell in love with what it did for people, what it was doing for me. I didn't even understand. I hadn't put it together yet. This was saving my life at this point. Um, and it was like this really crazy thing, and it was just so fun and exciting. And the money was not great, but I loved it. And so after about a year or two of that, um, my son's mom had gotten pregnant with him, and somewhere in all of that, I had ended up starting to work for a mortgage company because I was like, if I'm going to eventually have a family, I need to have money.
Right.
And so I got out of fitness for a little bit. And during the time I had gotten out of fitness, like I said, she had gotten pregnant. And for me, it was this really surreal thing. Like my son, even being around in existence, the possibility, just it was like the first little light in my life. And it was such a cool thing that I was like, man, I gotta figure out how to get right for this kid. I gotta really make sure that I'm able to do these things. And so I wanted to start getting right with my father. Um, and so somehow or another, one day I got a call from my younger sister. She needed a ride home from work, and I went, and my dad happened to be there. Um, and we got into this really bad argument. And just for me, I'm still in that stage where I'm growing, but I still have so much pride and ego. Now I get it too as a father. Like the way that I was with him was just so hard for him to manage. He wasn't in his best place in life either, and that was hard for him to allow to know that I seen him in that place in life.
Mm.
Um, and it was the most terrible thing because the last thing that he said to me and the last thing I said to him was basically we disowned each other at that point. And it was this horrible thing, but it sent me mentally down a harder path. So I just threw myself into work. This was back when, the mortgage industry was about to collapse. And about 30 days after my son was born, I lost my job.
Yeah, I mean,
And
this is 2008, 2009, or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
it's funny because
yeah,
back then I would always go work out at Bally's, which is I know where you came from
yeah,
and where
right,
Jason Tam, who is
right. Our
how
buddy
we,
Jason, yeah,
partially got connected. And
yeah.
I would see that guy, and I was like, man, that guy's living the dream right now. He's training people. I just missed it.
Jason's still living the dream, man. He's still living the dream every day. That guy lives the
Well,
dream.
that dude is the dream. I knew Jason Tam before Jason Tam knew me.
Yeah,
Um, and he didn't know it. I would always like watch that dude. I'm like, man, this guy is so cool. I looked at him kind of the same way I looked at my cousin. He just carried himself differently.
mm-hmm.
There's just something different about him. And so it made me miss fitness during that time. I just really started to miss it. And I was like, man, what am I doing? Even before getting laid off, I thought to myself, I'm in an office and it's cool and I make good money and that's cool. But I just longed for being back on the floor, working with people. Um, and so oddly enough, when I got laid off, I was kind of excited because my two options were go work as a bouncer at a strip club
Mm-hmm.
or get back into fitness because really nothing else was going. And my friend was like, hey, I can get you a job right now. And I was like,
Right.
I don't think that's going to work, bro. I got a kid and I'm not in that place right now. And so I decided I was going to get back into fitness and, start studying for new certifications and stuff. Um, and the more I got into it and really started to go after it was a time, it was so weird in our economy where people weren't hiring
Right.
and training because in Rancho Cucamonga at the time, it was a very heavy real estate area. So people that were buying training were real estate agents and mortgage
They had
people.
no jobs, and they had no jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, Rancho during that time was exploding. I mean, that club you're talking about was brand new back then. I mean, it was
Yep.
brand new, and we were building them like wildfire, kind of out in that region. As fast as they went up, though, and as fast as those areas were growing, those are the ones that got hit the hardest
Mm-hmm.
in those
Mm-hmm.
families and people. So now, yeah. So sorry to interrupt, but yeah. So the
No,
people
no,
that you were
no.
training, they had all this discretionary income. They're driving brand new cars, had multiple
Yep.
houses and boats, and all this stuff. Now are financially strapped. They're devastated literally overnight, and those
Yep.
are your clients. So now what? So who
Yeah.
are you training next?
Well,
It's
it's so funny because I didn't at the time, all I wanted to do was get back into training and I didn't care. And so nobody was hiring. I tried Bally's, they wouldn't hire me. I tried 24 LA, nobody would hire me. Um, and so I started calling the 24-hour fitness in Rancho. And I kept getting the fitness manager at the time. And I'm like, look, bro, I just want an opportunity. I just want to come in. I just want to meet you. I know you're not hiring right now, but if the opportunity comes, I just want, you know who I am. And he was like, oh, we'll keep it in mind, so on and so forth. And I called a couple times a week, every week for a few weeks. And one day he was like, man, I'm getting really annoyed by you, but I'm also really intrigued. So why don't you just come in? And I just got to put a name to a face at this point. And at the time I was doing MMA at a place locally. And so I was like, I'm on my way to MMA practice right now, but I could stop in. I'm just in my MMA gear. And he's like, oh, it's fine. Just come in. I just want to meet you. So I went in and we were shooting the shit for like a good 20, 30 minutes. And I was like, I got to get to practice, but thanks for actually just taking some time to meet me. And he was like, well, that was your first interview. So I'm going to set you up with our district manager. It's going to be your second interview. And I was like, oh shit. I didn't even know I was interviewing.
right.
Okay, cool. So I went and long story, getting the job. And my first day on the job, somebody was like, dude, what are you doing? And I was like, what? And he was like, why are you here? It's like to train people. What? I mean, dude, this is the dream right here. This is like, you get to help people. And he was like, it's dead. Like none of us are probably going to have a job in a few months. And really we're in a place where nobody can afford it, and it's a grind right now. I've been here for a while and I'm barely surviving. Like, it's not going to be a good thing for you, especially if you're just getting started again. And I was like, that's cool. I don't, I understand. I appreciate you letting me know, but I'll be here all the same. And that just always been my attitude when I'm into something is you can tell me whatever you want. I don't know if it's stubbornness. I don't know what it is, but it kind of makes me like, all right, I'm going to come back to you in 6 months when my client roster is full and I'm doing good, and you're going to see.
Yeah.
So that day, I had a conversation with my manager and he said, look, long story short, I brought you on to sell, and hold on. Sorry, 1 second.
Yeah, sure, man.
Where's the bear, you, my friend? Are you going to stay longer here,
bro? Just a little bit.
A little bit. How long a little bit?
Maybe another 30 minutes or so.
30 minutes. Okay. Don't move from your car because you can get a ticket and park here. But if you stay in your car, it's fine for 30 minutes.
I appreciate it.
But after 30 minutes, you need to leave, bro.
I appreciate it. You can edit that out, right?
Yeah, we can pull that out. That's great, though. I think we should leave. We should leave that shit in there. That's like, so. I mean, that's like, you've just been going through. I think that's actually perfect, man. Like, you've been going through this whole story and your journey about all the hardship, all the challenges, all the things you're going through. And one of the things the listeners and whoever's watching right now, if you're watching this on YouTube, Dean's sitting in his car in a parking lot. He's outside the treatment facility because his wife is going through treatment because she suffered her own battle with cancer. The parking lot attendants coming and telling you got to move. You're trying to balance all this shit in life, man, and just doing all the right stuff, and people are still just trying to get in your way. But just like you just said, the attitude you're handling that with is like, sure, man, I'll be out of here pretty soon. I got shit to do. That's great.
I mean, that's, you know what though, and here's the coolest thing is I've been stubborn and hard-headed most of my life, but it's really at some point, I hadn't met my wife yet at this point in my career. Long story short, I go and I start, my manager tells me I need to sell. I make a sale that first night, and then it takes some time, but I build my business up. But then I bounce around, to different 24s because I'm so restless. And still being young and arrogant, this is kind of where I meet my wife. And it's so funny that this happened at that point in our conversation, because literally this is a turning point in my life. That fitness started the process of saving my life. My wife, I mean, I don't know where I'd be in life without her. But it's crazy because one of the 24-hour fitnesses that at the time that I was going to, they started building these big super sports. The economy started rebounding a little bit, and the company was growing. And I really wanted in on this location. It was going to be the cream of the crop, baddest ass,
Or so facility. You thought. Or so you thought.
Yeah, 100%. And so I go to do this interview, and at the time I was reading a book called Good to Great, and and it's so funny because it's the perfect way to illustrate, like, when you're not in the right place in life, no matter what you do, you can give yourself all the knowledge and education in the world, but if you're not right mentally and emotionally, it's not going to work the right way. And so I go to this interview and I get into it with the fitness manager a little bit. I don't even remember what he said to me, and it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And so I'm being a little snippy back and forth, but still trying to be professional. And my closing line was, look, I believe in getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus, right? So if I'm not 100% the person that you want to hire, then don't hire me. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And I left, and they didn't hire me. And I was like, man, at this time I've been a trainer with that company for so many years. I've had my X amount of hours that makes you elite. I have all these certifications.
But you're starting to figure it out. You're figuring out how the rules get written and who's following them and who isn't. And I see where this is going.
So I keep one of the original fitness manager. He was at another gym location. He asked me to come work with them. And this guy, he was a great mentor. And that's one of the reasons I love the fitness industry, is because you meet so many great people along the way. And he sat me down, man. He gave me some tough love, and he was really hard on me, but in a good way. And he really made me think about what I was bringing to the table and about growing as a person, and starting to add a little more of a value set to my life, along with what I brought to the table as a coach. And so I ended up training some district managers and some people that were pretty high up in the company, and just learning from all these guys. And then a few months later, maybe another year later, the opportunity to go back to that club had come up, because I had been working out there, and I had a conversation with the manager, and I apologized for, the way that I conducted myself and stuff. And we got to develop a pretty good relationship. So I got hired there, and this is where we get a little bit into like some funny personal stuff. But my wife at the time, she was a trainer there, and I met her there, and we were just friends. But really, what happened was the first day, I'm super excited. I'm like in this good place mentally. I think I'm trying to grow as this person, and I'm gonna go at this whole thing with a positive attitude. And I show up first day at like 5 a.m. because I was always that early morning trainer. I get there. She's there. She walks up to me a little bit later in the day, and she's like, "Hey, look, man, I know you're new here, but this is my desk, so I'm gonna need you to move." And I was like, "Oh," I kind of laughed, and she looks at me. She's like, "You think I'm joking, but I'm actually
no, really, get out of my chair."
And I was like, "Well, screw you." So I go and sit somewhere else, and I didn't talk to her forever. And she didn't think nothing of it, because she just was joking with me, whatever. And so then somehow we ended up talking. We ended up being friends, and just kind of like, she helped me kind of get acclimated to, some of the stuff she was doing organizationally and stuff. And I was like, man, this is so cool. Then she left that gym and went to a different gym that was opening up, and it was all the rage, everybody was wanting to go there. And I was like, no, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to do my thing. And I was already kind of, in the process of going through like separation with my son's mom and all this other stuff. So she hits me up and she's like, hey, we have openings for coaches here. And I was like, oh, that's cool. She's like, hey, but you know what? We have MMA here. We have all this crazy stuff that I know you like. You should come check it out. Just come work out. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll come work out. It seems like it's up my alley. And I didn't realize she was recruiting me, because, at that facility, what happens is if you recruit other coaches, you get a commission off of them.
Yeah, you get a spiff. Yeah.
For their first 90 days of production. And so I go there, and
she knows you're a baller. Yeah.
And so by then she was like, introducing me to everybody, and like really just getting me acclimated to the culture. And I was like, oh, this is a really cool place. And again, obviously ended up making that transition, and she onboards me and all that stuff. And then my first 90 days there, I broke like a company record and did some other stuff. And so she was like loving it. And we just became really close, and we were good friends, and we started to develop this really complicated relationship at that point. We both cared about each other, but we were just in weird places in our life. We went through a lot of back and forth, and then somehow we came together. And then at that time, we did like a long distance thing for a while, and she was out in San Francisco and I was down here in Southern California. And somewhere along the lines, we made it work, and she decided to move back down. But at that time, literally the day that I was driving up to San Francisco to pick her up, she was diagnosed with cancer that day. And I freaked out. I didn't know what to do. And so, when we got home, I wasn't even sure she was going to stay, because she was supposed to move in with me. And I didn't know if she was going to stay. I didn't know what she was doing. And she was like, when she told me, she was like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. I was like, okay, I got to figure this shit out. And so I started making all these calls and doing all this stuff. Got set up with the best doctors, in City of Hope out in Duarte. Got her an appointment in there and all that stuff. And the reason this is relevant is because at the time, I was acting as like an assistant manager at the gym that I was at. I was a top producing trainer. I had all these quotas that were expected of me because I was just a really high producing trainer. We were one of the top clubs in our company. And I knew at a certain point, this understanding, and as great as they were about it, that I couldn't keep phoning it in, because we were at the hospital at the time, because she was stage 4, she had like a 19% chance of survival. And she had to have a ton of surgeries and, a bunch of other things. And she literally went from being a trainer, working out together one day, to within less than 2 weeks, I had to sit her up in bed, take her to the bathroom, shower her. She was just done. And so I was hardly ever at work.
Stage 4 is knocking on the door, man. I mean, if anybody's ever known anybody,
it was the first time you see somebody, like when they say somebody's on their deathbed, I'd never seen that, but I seen it in that way where, I watched my father die during that whole time. I went and seen him in the hospital one day, and he was suffering through some stuff, and he died, literally like holding my hand, and he was in a coma at the time. So I'd seen that, but I've never seen. It was literally the day that I got there, and the first time I had seen him in many years at that point. But with my wife, it was different because she was suffering day to day. And the most amazing thing though is you would never see that woman not smiling. You would never see that woman not in just the best, like it didn't matter what was going on. She was in an amazing mood. And for me, that's where I started to truly learn about life and people and giving and sacrifice and those things. That's when I became a better father. That's when I actually started to really truly grow as an individual, was during those times. And so I realized I wasn't going to be able to do all those things and be at the facility that I was at with the restrictions that I had. So I decided to do the independent thing.
That's where self-made comes in. That's where Miguel comes in.
No, not yet, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I went to this other place. It was just a little tiny studio, and I go there, and it's like, all right, this is cool. I had a bunch of people come with me because people always followed me from one place to the other, and it was perfect, right? Because all of a sudden, I'm making all the money, I'm doing all those things. But because, again, same thing. I mean, this is just the way it was. We were at the hospital at the time. Monday, she had treatment. Wednesday, we had a follow-up. And then Friday, sometimes we'd be back there for different things. And then Duarte, from where I live, is about an hour and a half. So you figure with traffic, we would be there for 8 hours at a time sometimes. So I'm training maybe 2 days a week. And so eventually, as what would happen is I lost a lot of my clients because, I just wasn't present mentally, emotionally, or physically.
Yeah, you have to be there. You have to be there in every kind of way. Yeah.
And it wasn't fair to them. And at the same time, I wanted to focus on her and what she was going through. So really, fast forward, she went through all this turmoil and all these crazy things. And it was the most magical time in our relationship. And I'm so grateful for it because it really solidified our relationship. At the time, my mother-in-law hated me because here's this guy who she doesn't know, she doesn't understand, who's, been divorced and all these other things. And she has had her reservations about me, but it also showed her that I was going to stick things out no matter what. And so it believe it or not, the cancer, as terrible as it was a huge blessing in many ways in our life. And we were really understanding that it was something that we grew a lot through. And so when she went into remission, it was like, okay, now treatment, because in her, like I told you earlier, her remission is basically every 3 weeks. She has treatment from now to the rest of her life. And so it's like, okay, now instead of, 3 or 4 days a week, now I'm at the hospital, every third Monday or fourth Monday or whatever it is for the day. So now I'm trying to rebuild my training business. I'm out of shape again, because if you don't know, when you go through chemo, you can't taste anything because the chemo kills all fast growing cells in your body. So it kills hair, skin, nails, taste buds, all those things. And so she couldn't taste anything. So pizza and Thai food were the only textures she could feel. So we ate a lot of pizza and Thai food during that time. So here I am, not really working out, not training, eating pizza and Thai food she went through chemo for 9 months. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to rebuild my business. And I'm looking at myself. I'm like, I got to rebuild my physique. I got to rebuild everything. And man, this is really what shaped me as a coach. I couldn't get back into shape the way that I was. This is, now I'm in probably my early 30s at this point. Body's not reacting the same. My business knowledge of building a business as a private personal trainer was non-existent. I mean, I knew how to work the club thing like no other. I knew where to position myself. I knew who to talk to. I knew how to develop relationships with membership councils, all those things. But to truly actually build a business as an independent contractor, it just eluded me. I had no knowledge of social media. I had no knowledge of marketing or how to actually run the business externally. What systems, what check-ins, what am I like? The gyms had always provided that for me.
Yeah, the big boxes give you the resources and really the framework to do it all. And as much as people want to badmouth, those big boxes, sometimes they do make it very easy in a lot of ways. I mean, you're working for them, no doubt, but they make it easy for you. And a lot of trainers make the mistake of like, well, I could do this somewhere else, and they find out real fast the things that you just said and how important.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way, and it got to the point, quite literally, where I I couldn't pay rent. I couldn't, keep the lights on. We lived in this little shitty apartment with the two kids, and my sister had to lend me the money for that because I had no money, and I was just struggling really bad financially. Oddly enough, and this is what I'm so grateful for, is my wife at the time, just because of her personality, I had no choice but to be positive. But there came a point towards like where I was like, I called her one day and I'm sitting in front of the studio that I was a trainer at, and I was crying. And I said, I can't do it. And she was like, what do you mean? What's going on? I said, I don't know how we're going to pay rent tomorrow. I don't know. Like, I know we're about to get the light turned off and all these other things. And I'm such a fucking miserable failure, and I let you down, and I don't know how I'm doing that. And you and the kids, we're all struggling so much. And so I think I just need to get a regular job and be a big boy and go get my shit figured out and stop being a child and thinking this fitness thing is just going to work out. And I'm sitting there crying in my car. This is why I love her, because she knows sometimes she's like the most understanding, sweet, loving person. And other times she's that tough love person. And she said, look, I know what you're looking for right now, but you're not going to get it because I know who you are and this is not who you are. And I need you to figure that out. I need you to man up.
Straight up.
Get it figured out, because this is not the person I know. I love you. I'm here for you no matter what. And regardless of what you choose, I'm going to support you and I'm going to ride with you like I always do. But this is not you.
But get your shit together.
Figure it out.
Yeah. And
so I made her a promise. I said, I'm going to get it together within the next 3 months. If I can't get it together within the next 3 months, then I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to just step away. And she said, that's not going to fulfill you, but I know you and I know you'll figure it out. So if you're saying you're going to give yourself 3 months, then I'm confident. And so I went home that night. We had a long conversation. I just told her I'm going to go into grind mode and I'm going to get it figured out. And she said, okay. And it was a rough go in the beginning. Obviously, this isn't one of those things where the next day
you don't just turn it on. Yeah, you don't just turn that on, right? Yeah. I
was probably 6 weeks in when I was just like, fuck. And by then I was just looking for solutions now. I'm not looking to complain or sit in my self-pity anymore. I'm just looking for solutions, but they were eluding me. And so I just started by, you know what? I have this client who, she told me that I don't have to be such a hard ass all the time. And, she was like really giving me good feedback about my attitude and how I was treating clients at the time. Because I was just that hard nosed, football trainer. You got to be tough and all this other stuff. And that's what it had served me for so long. And it worked for a lot of people. But
until
really what I started to realize is I needed to understand who and how, because some people that works for, some people that doesn't. And when you're a trainer, you have to understand who you're coaching and you have to understand what works for them. And so what I did is I started trying to get to know my people better. And I began trying to serve the people that I had, the couple of people that I did have, because I was down to a couple, just like 2 or 3 clients. And as I got to know them better and understand them better, then I was able to actually get to the point where in my consultations, I was building better rapport. I was talking to people that, we were getting to these really good places. I wasn't even talking about training at the time anymore. I was just getting to know them and understand them as a person. And then all of a sudden it was just like, I didn't even realize it, but my business kept growing. That one client turned into 2, that 2 turned into 3. They gave me other referrals. Hey, I got another teacher friend that wants to come train with me. Do you have a boot camp? Yeah, absolutely. I have boot camp. Didn't have boot camp, but I'll make one right now. And within 3 months, my business went from like, three clients to, 21 clients. And then from, by the end of 6 months, that 21 was closer to like 30, 40. And then, so I started to build some traction at this point. And I was starting to really kind of figure it out. And this is where that conversation with Miguel came into play, because I had bounced around to a couple of small facilities and I was like, this is not what I want. This is not what I'm looking for, but I don't want to go back to the box because I need my freedom. How do I get the best of both worlds? And it was that fateful call that, I called him that day and told me to come to Self-Made. And when I got there, like I said, that's really where it was like, this is the best of everything. And so when I came on to work for him, one of the things that we didn't have that I had developed was those tools, those systems, those resources. He had some in play, but he was like, I really like the way you run your business. How can we make that for everybody?
Right. And so now that's what's influencing Self-Made at a much, much higher and larger level. Correct. I mean, that's what you're doing now, essentially.
we basically sat down together, him, I, and my wife, and collaborated on the things that, you know, we needed as a company, and that we felt served trainers the best. Because he was in real estate, which is where he made his money. But, you know, him and his wife at the time were into fitness and that whole thing. And so they were kind of bridging into that world a lot more. And he had some training under his belt, but obviously I'd been doing it a lot longer on the corporate and the personal side of it, or on the independent side of it rather. And so we wanted to see, how do we bridge those gaps? How do we bridge the two worlds together, where we provide some structure, but it's not so much that it's suffocating.
Right.
And that's really where self-made starts to be what we were talking about earlier.
Right. The experience, the experience in life, and what you can come to the table with for a coach to try to make that connection. You were talking about the most important thing you learned there, which was serving your clients, getting to know them better so that you could serve them better, is essentially what you were talking about at the beginning of what you're doing for your self-made coaches, is getting to know them and finding out how you can serve them as a business leader or a mentor for them to be a better coach, so that they can serve their people, what then allows you by proxy to serve all of these people. And there's no way for you to get there without having gone through what you went through. I mean, there's systems, there's a lot of books you can read, right? There's a lot of masterminds you could probably pay for somebody to kind of give you their idea of what that is. But you went through this crazy journey, and you're still on it, right? Went through this crazy journey to wind up where you are. And so you can almost anticipate all the shit that some coach that's trying to make it in the business is going to go through. I mean, everybody's got their own things that they go through, but I think you'd find somebody hard pressed to go through the things in the way that you've been through them. So when you're out there and you're coaching these guys, and these new coaches come in and they're trying to build their business, and you're walking them through the process, and you're doing it in a way that works for them, right? There's a framework, right? But it's similar as what you were sharing with me. It's similar. And you have to get to know that coach and what it is that's important for them, what it is that they want to do, 100%. Right? You're just setting up the plan the same way you would, or the program the same way you would a client. What is what's the major limiter for most coaches that you work with that you have to overcome? And usually it's a self-limitation, I think is probably the answer, but what's the major limiter that you are helping a coach overcome, in terms of trying to make a career as an independent contractor? And so you said something earlier, which I still think there's so much stigma in being a professional coach, a professional fitness coach still attached. You said, oh, it's time for me to be a big boy and get a real job. Well, the reality of it is you can make a career in health and fitness, particularly as a coach. So as you're trying to bridge that gap, when somebody gets to that point, that limitation where they're like, well, I think this isn't going to work for me. Like, I have to go out and get a real job. What are the things that you have to help a coach get through in order to take them to the next level?
To be honest, the very first thing, and this is in our onboarding series, one of the things that we cover is the mindset of an independent contractor, right? Which is, you're no longer a trainer at this point. You're no longer a coach. You're a business owner. But as a business owner, the business that you own is a coaching business. Now, the difference is, as a coach, I can be a great coach, and that's all I have to worry about. As a business owner, I have to understand how to run a business. I need to understand marketing to a point. I need to understand my financials to a point. I need to understand all these other facets of business. But in there, I still have to be a great coach, because I have to have a great product. And so getting them to make that mental switch where they stop thinking of themselves in terms of just being a coach and getting a ton of certifications, but how do you relate to people? How do you, what are your interpersonal skills like? What are your marketing skills like? What's your knowledge of social media? What's your knowledge of whatever it is that you need in order to grow and sustain your business? And I think that a lot of coaches, they feel like if they're just great coaches, it'll just work out. And, in our industry, unfortunately, and fortunately, there's so much information. There's so many things out there now that people are just more educated. And so the regular status quo stuff won't work. So you have to take it upon yourself to get the education. You have to take it upon yourself to be great in terms of what you put out as a coach and the quality of your service. But you also have to have all these other things. And you have to provide this amazing experience that is in tandem with running an efficient business. Otherwise, like coaches will tell me, I just want to coach. Well, you can't coach long term. And I was a perfect example of that was me. You can't coach long term in this business and help and change and save lives if you can't be in the business.
Right. It's just this challenge always, I think you mentioned it, of trading time for dollars and scaling, and the figuring out how to scale up so that you're not just working 60 hours a week and then having to make the same decision next year. Well, if I want to make more money next year, how do I do it? I either got to raise my prices, or I got to train more hours, or I got to do both, or I got to put more people, in front of me during the same time for, so I'll make more money. What are you doing now? What are you doing right now at Selfmade to help coaches scale their business in a way that helps them make an income, right? But also doesn't so that they can pay their bills and have the things they need and want in life, but also doesn't break them in terms of, the hours that they have to put in. What are the things that you start with?
So in the very beginning, what we try to coach them on and help them with is understanding some simple systems. Some of them just, like when you're in the independent sector, some of them come in charging too little, or they don't understand how to create program packages or do online coaching, things like that. And those are just some of the really, really small tidbits, right? Like a lot of times people undervalue themselves as coaches, and they find themselves bogged down with a ton of clients, or a ton of people, and they're still not making very much money. But then at the same time, even once you've mastered that, you only have so many hours in a day. So like group coaching and semi-privates and a lot of that stuff is important too, where you can diversify that hour where now you're training multiple people in similar groups. And so we coach them on what those should look like, making sure you're not just throwing a bunch of people together and calling it group training, but, how do you group it around similar goals and styles, things like that. And then at the same time, we provide all our coaches with online platforms and being able to utilize the two in tandem with each other and creating overall systems versus, I'm just coaching you when I see you, and creating a holistic approach to training that way. So, that person that's training with you in person now has the ability to also have coaching offline, and or the person that can't come and see you can still get the benefit of your coaching. So that's going to grow their coaching business in another way. And then at the same time, we also, because they're independent, we offer them the availability to be able to, create small teams even with themselves. So you get a new coach coming in that has all this great knowledge, but he's not sure how to run a business. He can partner up with another coach, that has a team where they're still getting, help, and they're still getting guidance, even within our team. And now that coach that's running that business makes a little bit more. And then at the same time, the trainer under him is growing and learning and benefiting from all this. And when the time comes, they go and they do the same thing. So there's a ton of systems within our systems that we encourage and that we have seen grow and flourish, where some of these coaches, like I said, are making more money than I've ever seen coaches make in our industry, but they're not doing it at the expense of their clientele or their athletes, or taking advantage of other coaches. Even for example, my kids are enrolled in a program called Limitless Sports Academy, which is an academy within our facility where they partner with like a charter school. So they have all the kids on charter school programs, and then during a certain time of the day, all the kids do their athletic training. A lot of them are in sports and whatnot. And it's the guy that owns it. He has coaches that work with him that do that for him. And he oversees the program. And so his program is, a business within our business model. And he's able to do, pretty well doing that. But at the same time, he's able to serve the youth that have nothing else, especially with everything that's gone on in our culture and society with, all the other stuff going on. And my kids personally have thrived through that and become amazing athletes when they weren't athletes before. And so we have the ability to create opportunities. And so I think that's one of the most amazing things is we have these systems that do help coaches, right?
Sure.
A coach can make a 6-figure income working part-time hours, just charging reasonable training prices and including our online platforms and nutrition coaching. And that's something in and of itself that's unheard of in our industry. You mean to tell me I can not work 10 hours a day, make a 6-figure income, and still have time for my family?
Right.
But then you have these other coaches where now they're building businesses within our businesses, and they're flourishing on a level where they get to continue to grow. They still get to keep their brand. They still get to be who they are. And we're just there to kind of guide them and facilitate that. And on top of that, there's room for so many other things to continue to hybrid out of that and grow out of that, because we're not putting a cap on it. We're not saying you can't do these things, that you have ideas. So our coaches constantly come to us with these ideas. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And that's where the mentorship comes in. Is any coach in my company has the access or ability to go to their franchise owner and have mentoring from them. But any coach out of the probably thousands of coaches that we have can get access to my cell phone number, and it's not hard. It's on my social media. It's everything. And they can schedule a 30-minute, mentorship meeting with me, with my director of education. And they can have that one-on-one time. Even a lot of coaches do it with Miguel, who's our CEO. Hey, I have this idea and I have this thought and I'm trying to get this, I'm trying to get here. How do I do it? And we're going to try our best to guide them through that, or at least point them in the direction that they need to be guided. And so in our company, I think that's the second largest thing that is probably so important, is you have people like Miguel, like myself, like my director of education, his name's Mark Rodriguez, who runs our Self-Made Academy. And even our marketing director, Riley Clayton, he's, you want to get him on a call.
He's accessible. Yeah, he's accessible to you. Yeah.
You can get any of these guys on a phone call. We may be busy. It may take, a little bit of time, to actually do it. But anybody in our company can text us or DM us and call us, whatever. And so I think that's one of the most crucial things, is we try to stay pretty grounded into what we do. And for me, I'm nobody special. I'm just a guy that, really loves training people and really loves helping people. And I make a pretty decent living doing it. But for me, if I'm not helping people, then what the hell am I doing anyway?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's remembering where you came from, treating, the golden rule, treating people the way you want to be treated, and, help as many people as you can, and good things happen. I mean, those are sort of some basic philosophies. And I don't see a lot of places doing that. I see a lot of places kind of playing everything close to the chest or tight to the chest. This is mine. We have to watch out for people stealing our ideas or stealing our coaches or whatever, not understanding that's like that scarcity mindset, kind of pushes you into a corner and keeps you from growing. Rather, I mean, what you just said there, a bunch of independent contractors in the same facility, helping one another, mentoring one another, propping one another up, independent contractors working with and for other independent contractors in the facility, and that being welcomed and cultivated by a business is unheard of. You just don't see that because not everybody, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is, if everybody's trying to get a piece, of something else or of the revenue, then it creates a withdrawal from ever trying to do anything new or trying to come up with some new, program that could potentially benefit everybody in the gym or the facility, and more importantly, the clients. And for you, those clients are both your coaches and the clients that train with your coaches. I think that's a lesson that we probably need to learn as an industry. Whether you're working for, more of an enterprise, you're working in the mom and pop, you're working in a franchise like you're working at, is we need to share the wealth. We need to get together and we need to spend more time. Red Dot's done that quite a bit over the years in bringing in talent. I mean, great coaches have great coaches. You just articulated that in your story and kind of what you're talking about. And, you've dropped some numbers, coaches making, $200K or more, and they're not working 70 hours a week. They're working hard, and they're not sitting on a beach somewhere with a laptop and a Lamborghini in the parking lot. That's not what they're doing. They're grinding it out every day, and they're doing that through, systems. Yeah. But it's how you work the systems and how you collaborate on the systems, refine and work intelligently through those systems in order to make them work. But it's really how you treat people and how you approach the process. I think you said something that stuck out in my mind. One of our other conversations, maybe something I read, and that coaching is more of a calling rather than a profession. And the calling, and if you stick to that again and remembering where you came from, you can make it into a profession. But it starts with that and having that drive, that internal drive that you articulated earlier. And it's cultivated now into this culture, which has been ultimately successful and benefited so many people over the years. Man, the story in and of itself, I mean, your personal story, I mean, I certainly learned more about you than I ever thought I would, I would know. And it's compelling, man. I want to thank you for opening up and sharing that with us and with me. I can't imagine what valuable lessons you can bring to the table for, you know, a young and up and coming coach, or even an advanced, somebody that's advanced in their career and is looking to kind of break to the next level, that's taken their business from 0 to 50, then 50 to 100, and are now trying to take it from 100 to 200, and the life lessons and the perspective you can provide. And I know it's not, you've said it's an open book and you're always willing and wanting to talk to people that want to be better. For people that want to reach out and find out more about you or more about Self-Made, or maybe pay you a visit when they're down in your area, how do they find you, man? Where can they get a hold of you?
I'm on social media quite a bit. So my Instagram is just my name, Dean_Romero_SMTF. On there is all my contacts, so my email, all that kind of stuff is, like I said, I'm pretty open. So if you get me on there, you can get access to pretty much everything about me. And I'm always willing to meet with, talk to people, to share with anybody. And here's the really cool thing, and this is something we encourage at all levels of our company, is it doesn't have to be a trainer that is a self-made trainer, or even somebody that wants to be a self-made. It could just be a trainer or coach or business owner in any industry or in any company that says, hey, I have a question I want to ask about this. And as long as I have some time and the availability to help, I have no problem. And that goes for pretty much anybody on our team. I'm really blessed and fortunate to work with some amazing people. And as much as I think that I'd like to think that I add some value, every single person that works for our company, both from the trainer perspective and then our HQ staff, they're just amazing people. They're really awesome people, and I can't say that enough. And that's, again, going back to good to great. Right people on the bus, wrong people off, and no matter what, those people, they're the ones that are gonna be there to guide and cultivate what we're trying to do. And we all believe in helping the greater good of society. So anybody that wants to get a hold of me is more than welcome to.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, in closing, you've told the story about how fitness in the fitness industry, coaching, those relationships saved your life in the last, whatever it's been, 18 months, and our business being marginalized a bit, as, being part of the problem and not being part of the solution. I think for clients and coaches, you just painted a really clear picture of the power of what health and fitness can do for somebody, can get them through so many things. And as some of them more obvious and some of them less obvious, some of those invisible things that people can't see and deal with, that I hope we get to talk about more. But listening to your story, I was hopeful, and I'm pretty certain it'll inspire some folks to maybe get it together, re-examine things a little bit differently, and hoping they'll take advantage of what you've just offered there, and having people reach out. I don't care what business you're in, building culture and maintaining culture in any company should be a priority. And again, you as a business owner and manager and mentor, I can't say enough good things. Can't wait to come down and step into dinner with you. It's on me when I come down and visit you, brother. I appreciate your time. Yeah, man.
Come down, me, you, Jason. We'll get together, hang out, get a workout, get some good food.
Yeah, looking forward to it, man. Best of luck to you, and hope to connect real soon, man. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Iron Sights. If you enjoyed our conversation, you can support our mission by hitting the subscribe button, leaving a review, and sharing the podcast with a friend. I'll see you on the next episode.